Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for June 10th, 2025, and it's 9:30 a.m. I would like to call this meeting to order. Councillors, you have the agenda in front of you. I'd like to ask if you have any additions to the agenda. Mayor Harlan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I would ask that under agenda item 6, correspondence, we add correspondence that all council received on Saturday, too late for this agenda. And that would be an email with an attached letter co-signed by Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Jasper relating to congestion at least 2 spots.
Okay, thank you for that. Look to council for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Keller-MB, take that from you. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda stands. Okay, so we have committee of the whole minutes in front of us from May 27th, 2025. Just like to ask councillors if there's any business arising from those minutes. Not move on to go ahead, Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. The only business that I would I'm sure we could get an answer under item 257, motion 257. That was the approve the establishment of a full-time 2-year term construction coordinator subject to DRP eligibility. Have we found out if that position is eligible as yet?
I see Director Fark, coming to the table.
So we are, apologies, good morning, Deputy Mayor, members of council. So the request has been submitted to DRP. We are still waiting for a response. No formal offer of employment has been made and will not be made until such time as we get the confirmation from DRP.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillors, anything else from the committee of the whole minutes? Any business rising? If not, we'll move on to delegations. I'll look out to the audience to see if there's anybody. We don't have any scheduled delegations at this time of the agenda. It's an opportunity for any member of the community to come forward and address council on any topic that is on the agenda. And I see no one, so we're gonna move forward from there to agenda item 6, correspondence, and the added agenda item 6.1, letter from the chamber and TJ, and I'll like the mayor to speak to that if you'd like.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and thanks to council for agreeing to add this to today's agenda, although it did come in late. I would expect that the letter that councillors received on Saturday could be included in next week's agenda for discussion, and I appreciate it's out of order to start the discussion at council rather than at committee, and so councillors want to discuss it today. I'm certainly open to that. The gist of the letter is that there is evidence of congestion at both of the operational fuel stations in Jasper at the present time, just given demand and limited supply because of the fire. And the expectation is that that congestion will get worse as the busy summer season continues and hopefully continues to flourish. And just a suggestion that we consider what action we need to be able to take to alleviate some of that congestion and the risk that comes with it. So as I say, I'm open to have the discussion now, but might suggest that the matter just comes back next week with a letter on the agenda and perhaps give staff an opportunity to consider what actions we might be able to take as a municipality, either through bylaw or otherwise, to address the concerns.
Councillor Callahan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Thank you, Mayor Ireland, for raising this issue. I did raise this issue, I think, about 3 weeks ago. Mr. Don and Sergeant Daisy was here. And at that time, they said they would take it back to the safety committee and to have a discussion on that. So I would be interested to hear what discussion took place on this. I live in that area of town and I totally agree with the letter. You know, sometimes you can pass, there's nobody there. And then all you need is one large vehicle that goes in, blocks all the traffic. You know, I mean, it's yesterday I saw a kid just fell knocked down because traffic went in, traffic came out. It's going right across the crosswalk. It's quite dangerous, and I think we do need to come up with a solution.
Anything further on this topic, agenda item? Councillor Watson.
I just wanted to chime in on what Councillor Kelleher has mentioned. I too have seen that congestion and the potential for disaster at that spot. And I also wanted to express appreciation to the Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Jasper for raising the issue.
I'll take a quick question to maybe Director Park. Has there been any discussion about temporary fueling services at fueling stations? Well, I would suspect probably not the ESSO, but maybe the Petro on the other south side of the Canal.
I'll jump in first, Deputy Mayor Wilson, to say that it sounds like there's really 2 potential issues here for administration to explore. One is just simply traffic management at the 2 service stations. I said service station as if that's what they were now, but they're gas station, fuel stations. The other issue is going to be just the amount of fuel that's in town, which is a matter that the JRCC can perhaps assist with. So I'll defer that matter to Director Fark.
There has been discussion on that point. The challenge is that we would need a vendor to come forward with a proposal. And that is very unlikely to occur due to both the cost and permitting process that would be required to allow for temporary fueling stations. And we've seen no interest from the private sector to advance such an initiative. It's not something that would be within the mandate or the capacity of either the JRCC or Parks Canada to take on to provide a temporary fuel station. As Director Saunders mentioned, there's the traffic accommodation side of things, which I believe Director Nadon is already working to address. And there is other ongoing conversations with Parks about other solutions that we could bring forward. If I have an update on that, I will bring that back to council.
Thank you for that, Director Park. Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Through you to Director Fark. Has it been considered that like we at the municipality and Parks Canada share a fueling station over in the compound? Is there something that we could work out, say, with the business communities where like we have the bus companies, the raft companies that we could maybe set up an account with them? Maybe they could fuel some of their bigger buses in that area. That then they just pay the municipality or parks for that, so that will alleviate some congestion in town.
So that exact question has been raised and it is being explored currently. It is challenging because it is Parks Canada's card block, which that they provide access to the municipality and the RCMP. And so that is something that they would have to explore. They would also need a mechanism for cost recovery. Which is a bit challenging when it would be required to include private for-profit enterprises in that, but it is something that they are At this point, the question has been asked whether that would be possible, and yes, exactly with the intent to divert the large commercial traffic only. So any large trucks, and any, buses to those sites, and then leave the fueling stations in town for the more, residential or smaller traffic. I cannot say that I'm optimistic that we will be able to find a mechanism for that, but it is something that is being explored.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Melnick and then Marilyn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I think just an observation that all of us as residents have a responsibility to time our personal fueling to maybe parts of the day where typically the gas stations may be quieter. And over the summer, we may need to adjust our habits to maybe fuel up more frequently when the stations are quiet, so that we're always able to have a full tank of gas, or, should we have to evacuate. But also it frees up more space at the two stations during the peak times when, our visitors won't understand until they get here that there's only two gas stations. So I think as residents, we have a responsibility to be part of the solution as well.
Thank you for that, Marilyn.
Thank you. I don't want to interrupt discussion if there is more, but I was going to propose a motion. Simply that committee direct the letter that has been referenced appear as an item of correspondence on the agenda for the next regular council meeting, and that committee direct staff to report on any possible efforts for amelioration of the identified problem. And I do that with respect to staff. I appreciate it. It's a challenge to get something coming at you as it did in this case without even having seen the letter that we referenced. And knowing that time is short and everybody has his plate full already, but Director Park is already well aware of the issue and is just on the spot, giving us some assurance that the matter is being looked at. So in a week's time, hopefully we can see whether there are actions that might be taken by the municipality to help alleviate the congestion and the concerns.
Okay, there was a motion at the start of that. I think everybody understands, but I'd just like to look to council if there's any further discussion about the motion. If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Or not opposed, the motion carries for that. We'll move on to agenda item 7, new business. Agenda item 7.1 is Director's Report of Urban Design and Standards, and we have Director Sanders here to speak to that.
Good morning. So we, of course, the Urban Design and Standards Department is still pretty new, and we're working on many fronts. In the gallery today, we have our newest team member. Cam Jenkins has joined the municipality to fulfill the role of housing coordinator for a 2-year term. So you'll recall that Leanne Peltier moved into the position of housing manager, the position that was funded with the half funding that we received. So Leanne is in that position for 2 years, and Cam has joined us for 2 years as well to be the housing coordinator. So this will enable our efforts as a municipality on the housing front to a great degree. So just wanted to acknowledge the newest team member there. We've been busy on many fronts. On the major projects side of things, we've been helping out with Parks Canada on the regular little detail logistical tune-ups to the land use policy. But we also have been engaging with the community in April, May, and June about updates to the land use policy relating to residential density and parking. And also on the agenda today is a smaller project, but yet significant for the future of Jasper, around what are the values, the things that serve as our compass. I'll talk more about that later. been doing a lot of work on development coordination with our colleagues at Parks. One of the things that Parks has committed to do, and it's up on their website now, is every 2 weeks, they're gonna update what the turnaround times are for permitting. And we're really excited to see that transparency, and our Parks colleagues have been working really hard to get the turnaround times for permit numbers down. We've had a small role to play in helping out with that, but they've really been putting their shoulder to the wheel. And for a complete application, it's 36, 38 days now for a complete application. And we, of course, are supporting people to make complete applications, but we're also helping with permits as well. On the housing side of things, the accessory dwelling unit incentive program rolled out Monday last week. And the report here says 15 net new dwelling units, or 14 applications received. It's now 18 applications have been received. We also know that 15 net new dwelling units have received building permits with Parks Canada. The reason why that number 15 is important is our target is 240 over 3 years, net new dwelling units with the half funding, the Housing Accelerator funding from CMHC. So those are exciting metrics that are in play. And we also now have an affordable housing project, the Cannot Build with JMHC, has received its development permit. So that's something that happened over the last 3 months as well. So we continue to meet with people who are looking to rebuild. We continue to respond to development inquiries and help folks out. And one of our team members, Marley Pollock's been helping with the Pathfinders program, and he's delivering the rebuild, how to navigate rebuilding with the Pathfinder folks. So he's been contributing to that program, which we're delighted to have happen. And then, of course, we've had 3 phases of community engagement on the residential density and parking file, and that will be in front of you next week at a public hearing. That's been a ton of work. That's been a major project. And also coming to you later this week is going to be, later this month is going to be the Climate Change Adaptation Action Plan. So I'll be at your next committee meeting, but an online survey's been happening on that file as well. So I will leave it at that and see if you have any questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sanders. Appreciate the update, and also like to take the opportunity to welcome Cam. I think he'd be a great addition to the team with his extensive experience in local real estate and housing in Jasper. So welcome, Cam. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillors, questions for Director Sanders? Councillor Keller MP.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and welcome, Cam. I think it's great. Welcome to the team. Just on the 36 to 38 days, is that business days for the applications to be completed, or is that 36, 38 days?
I believe it is calendar days, business days. Sorry, it is business days. Yes, thanks.
Councillors? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I also want to congratulate Mr. Jenkins on this new role. I think it's a wonderful fit. My question around the affordable housing project, we've received development permit. Nothing can happen until the building permit is received, so no building quite yet.
Not yet. It's coming.
I'm very excited to start hearing the shovels in the ground and the beep beep beeps of the excavators and machines.
Anything further for the report of urban planning and design? Or design and standards, sorry. Okay, maybe I'll look to council for a motion to accept the report for information. Thank you, Councillor Waxer. All those in favor? And opposed? That motion carries. We have agenda item 7.2. That's values to guide the development of Jasper's town plan. And I look back to you, Director Sanders.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I'm pleased to have this in front of you this morning. I have 2 of my team members calling in via Zoom. Isla Tanaka will help with the presentation, and Michael Borland is going to share his screen so we can see some of the items. But The motion that's before you is that you receive the values of, and we have 6 words for your consideration, to receive those as information. And we're recommending that you receive those as information. We're not seeking your approval today, but we want you to be aware and get some feedback from you. The words are from the community of Jasper. So we engaged with folks early in April and then in May and then also in June. And we as staff have served as scribes, and we've even had the community edit the words and what they mean. So we're as administration, what I'm attached to is that we have some words, because the purpose of them is going to be to create and craft the town plan around the words. So they will be the spine or the structure for that. So also just want to pause and be really clear that the municipality does not have the authority, the Planning and Development Authority under the Municipal Government Act. But in this respect, we know that we're going to need to create a plan that will fulfill the obligations of the Canada National Parks Act. So we need a community plan under that act. And then under the Municipal Government Act in Alberta, we need a municipal development plan. So it fulfills both. And my proposal at this point in time, I've just been calling it the town plan. So Michael, next slide, please. So structurally, how I'm imagining the town plan thing is we choose what our direction is. And we choose our direction by naming some words. So the words do not represent our current state, though they could somewhat, but they do represent words we aspire to, or I think of them even as a compass. So when we're making future decision-making, or we're crafting the policy choices, or the outcomes and policy statements in the policy, we're going to do that work next year. We're noticing what direction is it we wish to move. So the reason I chose to work on the values right now, along with the residential density and parking, is knowing that those are really big decisions that we need to make as a community. And it's nice to have a sense of direction while we do that. It'll help us as we go through that decision making. So this slide simply shows the structure of how I envision a town plan taking shape. And we're at the very, very, very beginning, just with a smallish project to notice, well, what are the values, the things that are helping us make our choices into the future. So I say a smallish project, but also a very significant one. Okay, Michael, next slide, please. So in April, we conducted a number of engagement activities mostly with folks looking at the survey data that came out of the social needs assessment and the needs assessment. And I want to flag that data has some severe limitations in that we don't know who answered the data. We don't know if that data adequately represents who Jasper is. However, the words that come out of it are the words that are important for the community to test, and the larger community can test that. So I want to say that this isn't meant to be a statistically rigorous exercise, but it was a starting point for residents to identify some themes. So in this workshop, people looked at piles. Actually, I'm ahead of myself a little bit. So we met with people in April. Next slide, please, Michael. And in May, we kept meeting with people. And then next slide, please, Michael. And in June, we kept meeting with people. Go ahead, Michael. And when we started in April, we had 800 little sheets of paper, which were the responses of Jasperites to 2 significant questions in the survey. So again, that survey data is not robust, but it did serve as a starting point for people to identify the things that are important to them. So they took the data, they found themes. Go ahead with the next slide, Michael, please. And they fleshed out those themes to identify, like, what do those themes mean? And how do they take shape in Jasper? And then those themes were themed. Go ahead, Michael. And by the time we got to May, we had some words for people to play with. So we behind the scenes noticed that there were some themes around prosperity, around about being responsible as a community connection, et cetera. And then those themes themselves, as we wrote with them in May, they were edited by community members. And then another version of them being edited is taking place actually right now. Next slide, please, Michael. And at the end of the day, the 6 words that came up from the community were belonging, connection, nature, responsible, thriving, and inclusive. There's a description behind each of those words and some keywords. And at this point in time, I'm going to ask Isla, one of our town planners, to walk you through which each of those words mean. And before Isla does this, I just want to flag that you will notice some overlap, which is okay. And the main focus here is Isla's going to describe what each of those words seem to mean to Jasperites. And we don't have to have it perfect right now because we're just going to take them away and use them for the town plan work that will take place in 2026. But it gives you a sense of what the community sentiment is, in particular when we're making some other decision making in the months to come. Okay, so go ahead, Isla.
Thank you, Director Sanders. I will also mention that we still have a survey that is open until June 15th. So that will give us another chance to refine the words and definitions with that feedback. And then again, there will be opportunities next year when we start the next round of developing the community plan. So on the next several slides, you will notice individual colored words. And they reflect the changes that we made after the May engagement sessions, and they are what we shared with residents last week. Next slide, please, Michael. So belonging. In an earlier slide, you might have noticed that the first iteration of this value was stability. And we heard in May that that term didn't resonate strongly with residents. But so far, belonging seems to better reflect that Jasper is a welcoming community with affordable housing options and rewarding employment opportunities for all residents. And this value includes the aspirations for Jasper to have affordable housing, affordable living, a good quality of life, resident retention, and an adequate supply of housing. Next slide, please, Michael. The connection. Connection expresses Jasperites' belief that Jasper is a socially connected and safe community with strong relationships and social supports. And those include the keywords of community, relationships, safety, sense of belonging, and a small town feel. Next slide, please. Nature. So residents expressed a very strong connection to the natural world and felt that Jasper is a mountain community that offers access to an active outdoor lifestyle and an opportunity to connect with nature. And those keywords were connection to nature, lifestyle, recreation, sense of place, and stewardship. Next slide, please, Michael. So responsible. When we adjusted this value after the May engagement, we believed that environmental stewardship was covered under the previous value of nature. However, we heard loud and clear last week that residents did not feel the same way. So after the survey is completed next week, we expect that environmental stewardship will be put back into the description for responsible. But last week, we presented the following. Jasper is a responsible community guided by good governance, accountability, and transparency. You can see that we also changed 3 of the keywords based on the May engagement. Communication, truth and reconciliation, and partnerships were added to the list with intersection of governments, as well as services, amenities, and programs. Next slide, please, Michael. Thriving. So residents aspire for Jasper to be a thriving community where all residents have an opportunity to innovate and grow. And that includes having activities, affordable living, strong economy, good quality of life, and again, resident retention. Next slide, please, Michael. And finally, inclusive. The definition for this value, you can see there are a lot of green words on there. So the definition for this value was adjusted to be more similar to Jasper's equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. So Jasper is an inclusive community for residents of different backgrounds, abilities, ages, and orientations, with opportunities and activities in all seasons. And then the key words from residents for this value include equity, inclusive and accessible town services, multi-generational, open-minded, and peer-to-peer support. Next slide, please, Michael. So here again are the 6 values that were developed with residents: belonging, connection, nature, responsible, thriving, and inclusive. Thank you. Director Sanders, I pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Isla. So a moment to pause and understand the purpose of these words. So the words do not, and the description do not necessarily describe where we are right now, but they might for some folks, but they might not for others. So the purpose of the words is to structure our policy directions and our chosen outcomes around these. So there are some examples in the engagement materials, but very simply today, what we're looking for is not even quite your blessing, but just want you to be aware of what the community is saying is important to it right now, and what kinds of, basically it's a compass. So when we make decisions, are we making decisions that foster belonging, connection, nature, being responsible, thriving, or inclusive, or are we making decisions that pull us away from those values? So I will leave it at that, and if there are any questions, Isla and I are available to answer them.
Thank you for that, team. Councillors, any questions for Beth and her team? Comments? Councillor Dewana, did I see your hand up?
I didn't put my hand up, but one thing that, well, I just thank you and thank you, Director Sanders, for all the work that your team's doing. And I think these are really healthy exercises and processes to go through and to have. Just experiencing the use of our inclusivity policy and how information that gets to council and decision making gets to council through those filters has really improved our decision making. And I think in a similar process, this way, I feel is going to make decision making for our community a better place. Thank you.
Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Director Saunders. It was very interesting, and I completely feel very strongly about having the values-oriented planning. I wondered if I wanted to make the comment that I, like many of the public, feel strongly about environmental stewardship remaining under the responsible. But I also wondered if under responsible there should be a little bit of emphasis on or the words emphasis on relationship building and on the left-hand side, because otherwise truth and reconciliation kind of doesn't really fit under good governance, accountability, and transparency. I felt like by putting an being responsible for developing good relationships helps us around partnerships and around truth and reconciliation. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and I appreciate the information, and I share with Councillor Waxer that the observation that a values-based approach is so important to formulating the town plan in future. The one thing that I thought might be missing here is visitors and the visitor economy. And I appreciate that under belonging, we use the word welcome, but the rest of the text is all focused specifically, I think, on residents. And somewhere I think it's important that we reflect in our values the words from council's strategic priorities that we recognize the fundamental importance of our visitor economy. And I don't see anything in here that really reflects in any of the 6 words, our connection to a visitor economy and how important that is. So it's something that, and I can understand from a resident's point of view. Look at the town plan as the plan for the residents, but all of our residents benefit in one way, directly or indirectly, from our visitor economy, and somewhere I think that should be reflected in one of the values.
Councillor Demota?
Yeah, I have to say that I really respect the insight that Councillor Waxer and Mayor Island have emphasized, and I think those are important. And to even add to that, what the mayor just referred to, and I think even just linking up with the destination stewardship plan that Tourism Jasper worked on for our community and community engagement. I think that's an important piece that helps tie initiatives like that together. So again, I appreciate the insight.
Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I just, in the commentary regarding inclusivity and also regarding the visitor economy, I see under thriving, there's some sample policy directions which may help to emphasize the tourism economy. I see one of the sample policy directions indicates that Jasper promotes its tourism sector and seeks new opportunity to meet the needs of visitors. So it will not specifically maybe in the verbiage under thriving. I think as I see the policy direction would be that that's a reality of what a thriving economy is. And residents chose to change the words from prosperous to thriving, I believe, so that there was still an emphasis on the tourism economy, but not solely an emphasis on the tourism economy. Is that a good way of summary? Am I reading that right?
Through Deputy Mayor Wilson to Councillor Melnick, yes, there was in May, the word that had come from April was the word prosperous. And then in the editing process that community members went through in May, they changed, there was some folks were really comfortable with the word prosperous, others were more comfortable with the word thriving. At the end of the day, administration is not attached to what word we use, but what the sentiment is. And Councillor Melnick is correct that these words serve as a point of direction. And as the project moves along in 2026, we'll identify specific policy directions that will flesh out what each of these mean, where some of the missing ideas might come to fruition. That said, all of your comments will take away and work into the next iterations of both the single words, but also the description of them. And then all, as a whole, these 6 words are going to guide how we flesh out all of the policy directions on every single front. But that doesn't mean that we're going to not do what you've just said, and we can work some of these ideas into the text. And then you won't see this again till the new year, but yeah. I'll leave it at that, Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Anything further, councillors? If not, I'd look for a motion or two. Mayor?
I will make the motion that committee recommend council receive the values of belonging, connection, nature, responsible, thriving, and inclusive as information.
Thank you for that, Councillor Waxer, or sorry, Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I did have one comment before the motion goes through, and this is, I do support the motion. And just further to Mayor Allen's comments about visitor economy, I agree, and I find it interesting that this is resident feedback. So moving back into the destination stewardship plan from Tourism Jasper, maybe residents want that value aligned visitor visiting us. It's in their stewardship plan. So I just wanted to make that comment, but I do absolutely support the motion.
There's nothing further. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion carries. Marilyn.
Well, mine wasn't important. It's again, just to add levity when the words changed from prosperous to thriving, I was gonna say that maybe the Star Trek people were making influence and that we're taken by these people later, so just for fun.
Councillor Boxer.
I'm happy to make the second motion. That committee recommend council direct administration to incorporate the values of belonging, connection, nature, responsible, thriving, and inclusive in the creation of Jasper's town plan, fulfilling the requirements of community plan under the Canada National Parks Act and the Municipal Development Plan under Alberta's Municipal Government Act.
Thank you for that, Councillor Boxer. Councillors, any debate? Not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that motion carries. Councillor Hall.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge Michael Borland for being an amazing page flipper.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7.3, public hearing process, land use policy amendments to increase residential density. Director Saunders, can you take us through the process here and kind of draw out the roadmap for us?
Yes, you bet, Deputy Mayor Wilson. So next week on June 17th we have scheduled a public hearing, and this will be an opportunity for council, for administration and the community to practice conducting a public hearing as we would if we had planning and development authority under the Municipal Government Act. So we do not own, if you will, the land use policy. It belongs to Parks Canada, who has planning and development authority. That said, as we're growing our sea legs and taking on this authority over time, we have engaged as a municipality and our administration in engaging the public on residential density and parking, recognizing that we have a housing situation in Jasper. So we do the engagement, and then there are some proposed amendments to the land use policy. If we had planning and development authority, you would have a bylaw. And to change that bylaw, you would need to have a public hearing. So that's why we're going to practice it. In the end, what we're doing is we engage with the community in April, May, and June. And we have feedback on a number of proposals, but the opportunity for the public to speak directly to you rather than administration is in the public hearing. So that's what's scheduled on June 17th. So that in a way is the culmination of all of the engagement that administration has been doing on the municipality's behalf. And then we're going to have in front of you next week, when you're council, a series of proposals for you to weigh. And process wise, what we're expecting is you folks will make some decisions about what you think the best course of action is for Jasper when it comes to residential density and parking. And you will pass a series of motions. And ultimately what you will be doing is making a recommendation to the superintendent of parks that policy X or amendment X, please change this in this way. And then that's the request that comes from the community. So process wise, the decision that is before you, or the recommended motion, is that committee select June 17th at 1:30 to be that public hearing. And then from that point, you can proceed with any such amendments as you see fit. Process wise, at the public hearing, will provide you with a good amount of support, but imagine a public hearing being a meeting inside a meeting. So you'll convene council, and then you'll convene inside that a public hearing. And what will happen is administration will present what's happened and what the proposals are. Then you're also going to hear from the public, whoever decides to show up. And if for any members of the public listening, you can let us know that you're coming, or you can arrive at 1:30 at the forum room on Tuesday, June 17th. And what council is going to do is you're going to hear advice and recommendations from administration. And you're also going to hear what we heard in the engagement, but you're also going to hear directly from residents. And in that container of a public hearing, you're gonna hear all of that information, and then you're going to close it. And then you're still in a bubble of, you're gonna make a decision on the land use policy just amongst yourselves, because you're going to have heard from administration, residents, professional advice, sentiments in the community, and then you have the obligation, as you would under the Municipal Government Act, to make the best decision you think can be made on this file for the municipality. So that's what we're setting you up to do. So the motion in front of you is to select that date, or if you would like to take no further action or an alternate date, those are the options we've put forward to you. I will leave it to you folks for any questions. Happy to support you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. My question is, if a resident can't attend in person, can they Zoom in to the public hearing?
I believe what we're looking for are people to attend in person. If someone is not able to attend in person, we should welcome a written, they could send something in by email. And also, yeah, an email, a letter, what have you. Yeah, that would be sufficient.
And I think I picked up on it, but public can show up without notice and speak as well.
Yes, that works just fine.
And, you know, with the absence of no questions currently, I'll ask, are we within the, you know, the timeline, like the notice to the public? If we're suggesting that this is next week, are we within the boundaries of giving notice to the public regarding these issues?
Strictly speaking, for council to make the decision today and 1 week notice, no, we're not. Administration has sent notice out ahead of time, assuming you would be okay with this on June 17th. It's been the schedule for a while. We do not conform notice wise with the Municipal Government Act. We would need quite a bit more time. But our choice as administration was, we've been very clear about, we're aiming for June 17th public hearing. We've done a good amount of engagement with the community, and this is a practice public hearing, and it does not need to adhere to the stringent requirements of the Municipal Government Act. So our choices have been in the spirit of.
Great, no, thank you for addressing that, Councillor MP.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Just to follow up on that, how are we advertising the public hearing?
Deputy Mayor Wilson, that is a tricky question in this day and age when we don't have really reliable, like I go back in time to when there was a newspaper and you put an ad in the newspaper. So the advertisements are posters in town. So it's as simple as that, but also there's quite a bit of activity and notifications in social media. So our comms colleagues are working on that. And we're also working with the local and the Fitzhugh to get some ads in there.
And it's too late to put it into our utility newsletter to go out?
I make that assumption, but I'll double check.
Councillors? Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and through you to Director Sanders. So the context of our engagement in the public hearing will be to review the overview of proposed land use policy changes that are attached to this agenda. So these policy changes would be presented to us in the form of a public hearing, and residents would be able to engage on any one or a number of these policy changes. Am I understanding how we'll be conducting and what will be conducted in the public hearing?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilson to Councillor Melnick. Each of those, there's a lot there. I think it's almost unfortunate, but boy, oh boy, you know, we're gonna drink from the fire hose next week. Is we're gonna have a public hearing that's gonna be quite complicated in terms of, there's, for example, 15 proposed changes to the land use policy. And each of those are a little bit potentially tricky. So in the public hearing, a resident can speak to all of them at once and just say what it is they'd like to say. If they like something or they're worried about something, And then as you're deliberating each step along the way, you're obviously gonna do some discernment and go, okay, I heard feedback about this one, but I didn't hear anything about this one, or I only heard this kind of feedback about this one. So we'll support you along the way, but yes, those, that overview document is going to be helpful for residents to understand things. There's also a lot of information on the Engage Jasper website about the proposals, all of the panels that were at the public engagement last week. The online survey is still open, so there's a lot of information in there for each of the 15 proposed amendments to the land use policy. So residents could do the online survey at engagejasper.ca. And in doing the survey, learn a little bit more about what each of the proposals are, while also saying if they're comfortable with it or uncomfortable with it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, to you, to Director Sanders. So after council goes through this hearing, what is the expectation on council that we make a decision that day, or do we have time to have a further meeting to debate, or are we expected to have an outcome at the end of that meeting?
Deputy Mayor Wilson, through to Councillor Kelleher MP, you have a choice to make about whether you wish to receive all that information and close the hearing. And if you close the hearing, technically under the Municipal Government Act, if you wanted to reopen the hearing to continue hearing from residents, we would need to advertise again, etc. But there's a procedural way, because I think there's two ways you could potentially want to pause. One could be close the hearing and then just sit with it, but not engage anymore, and then come back at a later meeting, so at the July 8th meeting, and then continue your deliberations. Another option would be for you to pause the hearing and then on July 8th reconvene it. So there's two procedural ways you could handle that. We'll support you in that decision making along the way. Yeah.
Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. On that same line of inquiry, we have an advertised start time, so the public hearing is embedded in the regular council meeting, which starts at 1:30. Has there been any indication of an end time for that? And if not, just on the hypothetical that we get 100 people who are all wishing to speak, we reasonably probably can't do that in an afternoon. You've indicated that it would be within council's prerogative to recess and continue later. But do we have any obligation with respect to an end time? And if somebody shows up at 4:30 and we've adjourned or recessed, do they have recourse?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, to Mayor Ireland. We don't have a time when it closes. The only thing that's going to confine you is your procedure bylaw. So you would just need to note that along the way. If you close a public hearing and someone wishes to speak to it, then they can't. If you recess it to the next day or the next week or 2 weeks later, then the invitation would be to that individual to reappear at the public hearing at whatever date, at whatever time, and speak then. But technically, once it's closed, a council does not receive additional information. You make your decision based on the information that you have in that public hearing. And that's something for us to practice under the Municipal Government Act. You haven't been doing that since 2001 because you didn't have Planning and Development Authority. So this is a way for us to practice that. But you could recess and reconvene the next day. You could recess and reconvene at the July 8th council meeting. There are choices for you, but once it's closed, it's closed.
Is there any particular reason you didn't pick June 24th for this instead of June 17th?
June 7th, what? Pardon me, June 17th is a council meeting?
It is.
So we chose a council meeting rather than a committee meeting so that you would be able to make decisions. And the other timeline here is we wanted to build in an opportunity. So with June 17th, if you want to recess and reconvene on July 8th, you have an opportunity to do that before the summer vacation. We also wanted to set this up so that a public hearing could happen not during July and August, when many residents might not be around. Or they might be, I mean, they're already busy if they're working with visitors. But we also recognize that sliding this in before the summer break is important, but then also sliding this in before we get into the weird, I'm gonna call it the twitchy election season. If it hasn't already started, it's for sure gonna be happening in April. So we just wanted to slide this in before the summer. I say slide this in, but it's been a ton of work, and the residents have been doing a ton of work in April and May and June, but scheduling wise, we wanted to set this up so that you could conduct a public hearing before the summer break and have space to reconvene if you needed to.
I think also we were looking for a chair with decades of experience rather than the deputy mayor to chair that meeting. Okay. Anything further? Councillors? Or if not, Mayor on it?
Having seen no other hands, I will make the motion that committee select June 17th, 2025 at 1:30 PM for a council to conduct a public hearing about proposed amendments to the town of Jasper land use policy. So that is the motion. Speaking to the motion, I accept the recommendation from administration that this is a really good opportunity to begin to acquaint the town with a new process. Give council also an opportunity to engage in a public hearing process, even though it's not specifically mandated in our circumstances. It will be really useful, and I just wanted to draw attention to the previous RFD about values, and I thought that the two paragraphs in background and discussion might easily have been lifted and put into this RFD as well. It is a really condensed explanation of why we are in this position, and it helps, I think, address questions that are circulating about why, if the legislation changed to give us jurisdiction over land use planning authority, we're not there yet. Well, there are a myriad of technical reasons that we are not, and this is one of them. But it really does give us a chance to exercise the powers that ultimately will be conferred on the municipality. And I really appreciate that aspect of the RFD. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 7.4, Recovery Advisory Committee feedback on draft wildfire recovery priorities. Not sure who I'm looking at. I'm looking at Mr. Olaf. My apologies.
Am I coming through on this?
Oh, there we go.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson and Council. The request for decision in front of you this morning is with respect to the Recovery Advisory Committee's feedback on draft wildfire recovery strategic priorities. Some background on the request for decision. On January 14th, committee directed administration to to develop draft wildfire recovery strategic priorities. And administration did so and brought those back to committee on the 11th of February. at which point committee directed administration to seek further feedback on the draft recovery strategic priorities from the Recovery Advisory Committee. The Recovery Advisory Committee discussed those strategic priorities in a series of meetings and provided feedback through the JRCC and administration. That feedback was summarized by the chairs of that committee and is included in your agenda package. The Recovery Advisory Committee suggested several amendments to the draft strategic priorities, as well as some additional strategic priorities, specifically around social recovery, truth and reconciliation, monitoring and evaluation, and communication and alignment. The recommendation from administration is to hold a dedicated workshop with council to consider these adjustments, which would provide an opportunity for council to consider those recommendations in detail. Alternatives to that recommendation are to direct administration to revise the draft recovery strategic priorities and to bring those back to committee for further consideration at a future meeting, or to receive this report for information and thereby maintain council's existing strategic priorities, including those draft priorities, as being broad and flexible enough to encompass wildfire recovery considerations. As I mentioned, the content of those recommendations is included in your agenda package. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, myself or Director Fark.
Thank you for that. Councillors, questions? Mr. Oldoff? Comments?
Deputy Mayor Wilson,
Yes,
if I may.
please.
Just one consideration, there is a timing component to this that I would like to bring to council's attention. So administration is working on the completion of a recovery plan as well. And we are looking to try ambitiously to have that completed in advance of the 1-year anniversary of the fire. And to be able to use that then as a communication tool with our community around the progress of recovery and what recovery will continue to look like. Obviously, from an administrative perspective, it is beneficial if we have a final direction from council and can incorporate that in the plan in enough time and in advance to be able to incorporate that into the recovery plan and then in advance of being able to go public with that. So if council agrees with the recommendation, we would request that we look at the earliest opportunity to convene that discussion in order to be able to make that very ambitious timeline that we are trying to manage.
Thank you, Director Park. Councillor Demoto.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I think within the strategic plan itself, the way it was designed was to it last for 4 years, but go into part of the first part of the term for the next council. And I think the more efficient that we can make this, understanding the principles, as long as they're effective to the strategy that we have in place, we'll be teeing up the next council to incorporate some of that that we've been working on throughout the years, and some of those values have evolved and priorities have evolved from that. And I think that this isn't going to be extremely permanent for 4 years. So I think to transition and set up the next council for their planning, that the sooner that we can get this dealt with and done with the proper intent, the better it is.
Thank you for that. Councillors, anything further? And so this workshop, you're kind of proposing within the next couple of weeks.
Indeed, in order to make the timeline that we would need to get the full approval process, we would like to be achieving a final draft before the end of this month. So therefore, yes, we would appreciate council's input at the earliest possibility in the coming few weeks.
Okay, councillors, Anybody interested in making a motion? Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I'm happy to make this motion. And as the chair of the Recovery Advisory Committee, I can say that we spoke to this and discussed it at many meetings, and this will be really nice to get in front of council. So I would make the recommendation that committee direct administration to organize a council strategic priorities workshop to consider and integrate the Recovery Advisory Committee's feedback on the draft of wildfire recovery strategic priorities.
Thank you for that. Would anybody, councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Demoto?
Yeah, I'll support that. You know, I appreciate that one of the alternatives is just to integrate the recommendations, but the advisory committee, you know, to keep that separate from a decision-making committee, I think it's proper for it to come to council for consideration because it is set up to advise council on decision-making. So I will support that.
There's nothing further from councillors. I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that motion carries. Okay, looks like we're moving on to motion action list. Director Sanders, do you want to take us through that?
Certainly, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Everything is on track in the motion action list, and administration has no modifications to note to it unless there's anything you folks see.
Councillors, anything regarding the motion action list? And if not, I'd look for a motion to approve the motion action list as presented. Councillor Waxer, get that motion from you. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. And looks like we're coming up, we're at agenda item 9, councillor upcoming meetings. Councillors, anything to report? Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I will be attending a library board meeting this evening. Next Monday, I'll be attending a YRL board meeting, which is the Yellowhead Regional Library. And tomorrow evening at 5 p.m., we have our very first Pathfinders meetup, which is exciting.
Thank you for that. Any other councillors like to report? Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. It's been a busy week. I'm happy to have attended the council workshop on residential density and parking, as well as on the 9th attended the Jasper Recovery Advisory Committee meeting yesterday with Councillors Hall and Waxer. And tonight I'll be attending a subcommittee of the Jasper Yellowhead Historical Society, planning the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the climb of Mount Alberta by the Japanese climbers.
Councillor Waxer?
Yes, tomorrow I will be attending the last community conversation for children and youth. And on Friday, the Communities in Bloom meeting with the operations department.
Thank you. Anything further? Maren?
On Saturday, I will be attending as a panelist for a rural resiliency symposium. Just trying to share knowledge that we have gained here about how to make communities more resilient in the face of climate events, whether they are atmospheric rivers or wildfire or flood or drought. And it seems appropriate that we share our learnings here as broadly as we can when we look across the country now and see so many communities under evacuation, under threat of devastation, much as we have experienced. So that is sometime Saturday. I can recall when, but I can report afterwards about how that went.
Great, thank you, councillors. We've got agenda item 10, upcoming events. So Jasper Filipino Canadian Society flag raising is 11:30 to 3 p.m. on June 12th at Commemoration Park. Community Futures is hosting Lemonade Day, June 14th. National Indigenous History Month and National Indigenous Peoples Day, June 21st. Diploma ceremony for École de Roche graduates is 1:30 p.m. June 24th at the École de Roche Gymnasium. And Jasper Junior Senior High School graduation is 1 p.m. June 26th at the Jasper Junior and Senior High School Gymnasium. Candidate pancake breakfast and flag raising July 1st at Commemoration Park. We have come to adjournment and look to Councillor for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor. All those in favor? Opposed, that motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for attending.